What a wonderful introduction, Jesse. Thank you so very much. My name is Larry Jordan. I am delighted to have you joining us today. We're going to be talking about text extrusion and image repair using Boris Continuum Complete version 9, which is so brand new, the bits are not yet dry inside the internet. What I want to cover today is 3D text extrusion in both Final Cut Pro 10 and Motion. We're going to look at extruding text, and we'll also look at extruding EPS files. Then another huge section within Continuum Complete is image restoration. I'll look at how to correct lens distortion caused by GoPro and other fisheye lenses, image sharpening, skin softening, wire removal, standard def to high def upresing, and this one is just leaves my jaw on the floor. I'll show you how to remove objects from the frame. Now, there's a lot of stuff inside Boris, and I was working with it over this last week trying to plan out this whole webinar, and I had this key insight that every effect inside Final Cut Pro, not just effects from Boris, but effects that Apple creates or effects that any third-party developer creates, is actually a Motion 5 template, which means the developer has to pass all these Motion 5 parameters through widgets and rigging from Motion 5 over to Final Cut. This means that if you don't have the controls that you need inside Final Cut, more than likely you're going to have the controls that you need inside Motion. So move your effect over to Motion and create a generator, which you can then move back to Final Cut Pro 10. This ability to harness both the editing capability of Final Cut 10 with the effects capability of Motion makes creating effects a whole lot more powerful. So just because you don't see a thing that you can adjust in Final Cut doesn't mean that we can't adjust it in Motion. And this same Boris Continuum Complete works the same in both applications. Thinking of that, just to get some tech specs out of the way, Boris Continuum Complete has a retail price of $695. But what's really cool is they've broken out sections of the app into what are called FX plug units, which range in price from $99 to $299. You can see more of this on the Boris FX website. The whole package contains more than 230 filters, transitions, and effects. So you can get the whole thing or just related chunks. It supports both Final Cut 10 and Motion 5. Other versions of Continuum Complete support Adobe, Avid, Resolve, and Sony. All the effects in Final Cut are rendered in 32-bit float color space. This gives us the highest possible color rendition when we're creating our render effects, and it's GPU accelerated for both OpenCL and CUDA, supports images from standard def up to 4K, and there is a free trial version available, which frankly you should all download because it gives you the chance to play with all this stuff. A free trial version is available at borisfx.com. And I want to thank the people at Boris for inviting me to do this webinar. I was happily sitting there wondering what I was going to do with my Thursday today, and a couple weeks ago, Jesse gave me a call and said, "Larry, your life is needing more challenge. How'd you like to do something on Boris effects on Continuum?" And I've worked with this package for many years and happy to talk about it now. Due to the way that Final Cut 10 works, basically integrating motion templates inside Final Cut, there's no help available within the BCC plugin from Final Cut. If you move to Motion, the help files are available, or, which is what I do anyway, I go to borisfx.com/helpdocs, and I've got the help docs open on one window inside my web browser, and I'm working on Final Cut on the other, and it makes life a whole lot easier as I'm trying to look up what the controls mean. And the reason I mention this is Boris is legendary for providing controls for their effects. There's two schools of thought. One is make the effect automated with limited number of controls and just have magic happen. And the other is give you every possible tweakable setting that you can use. And Boris has gone off the deep end of giving you settings that you can tweak. And you'll see what this means in just a couple minutes. I want to show you how we can do text extrusion and image restoration using Boris Continuum Complete version 9. So let's get ourselves started. We'll hide this, switch over to Final Cut, and there it is, extruded text inside Final Cut Pro 10. It brings tears to my eyes, and it's not just because it's my company logo on the screen. So how do we create effects like this? Well, there's a couple of different ways. We could work with an existing EPS image, or we could work with text. For those of you that have had a chance to work with Final Cut 7 and have known the Boris titling package that came with Final Cut 7, you'll have a pretty good idea of how this works. But for those of you that are new to everything, let's just take this from square one and build something from scratch. So let's reveal the browser. By the way, I'm working with Final Cut Pro 10 10.1.3. That's the latest version. And I'll just throw in some cool keyboard shortcuts as we go along the way. One that I really love. Notice how we've got the library list and the browser showing at the same time. Sometimes I don't need to see it. If you type Control Command 1 makes the browser and the library list disappear, which gives you more room for looking at the inspector or scopes or the actual picture itself. So if you're wondering how that manages to appear and disappear all the time, Control Command 1 is my new best favorite keyboard shortcut. In order to apply extruded text, oh, look at that. That is so cool. This is one of the background textures that ships with BCC 9. And what I like about this, just, oh, by the way, is that if you go up to the generator menu inside the inspector, we can do things like change the look. Now, clearly, we could put a blur on this and have the marble be a little bit less in your face where that veining is, but we can control the thickness of the veins. We can control the mutation of the veins. I mean, is that not cool or what? Instant marble goodness. And anyway, I digress. There's if you want to know where the BCC backgrounds are, you just go to BCC textures, and they ship with all these different textures, which can all be played with as you see fit. But I'm not here to talk about textures. I'm supposed to talk about extruded text. So let me get back on track here. In order to extrude text, you have to use it as an effect. It has to be applied to a clip. So I've set this generator up as a clip. You could have the extruded text be extruded on top of video, anything you want. In this particular case, I'm using this. So we go to the effects panel, the effects browser. We go down to where it says BCC 3D objects. Now, you might think that they would have had 3D text there instead, but 3D objects is the magic word that unlocks the text, and we grab the effect and drag it on top of the clip. Instantly, 3D text shows up superimposed on top of the background. Now, if that's what you want, the text superimposed on top of the background, you don't have to do anything. But in my case, to make it easier to see what we're changing, I'm going to hide the background. Select the clip, go to the inspector, go all the way up to the top, select the video tab, because that's where we change effects inside Final Cut. And as with all effects, it's listed at the very top of the inspector. If you need to adjust preferences, such as registering your software and other stuff, you check the preferences box. If you want to edit the text, which is where we're going to go second, we'll click the edit the text box. But in my case, I want to turn off the background. So I go to the blend mode and set this to none, transparent background, and it just took that clip that I've applied my text to and made that background disappear. Because the effect has to be applied to a piece of text, because that background has to be applied to a clip, and sometimes you don't want to see the clip, being able to turn it off easily solves that whole problem. Now, you remember I mentioned that there is a few settings that we can adjust. Well, as we scroll down here, you can see that there's more than just a few. It numbers into the cajillions. If you're somebody that likes to tweak, we can tweak till the cows come home on this. And if you're somebody that gets intimidated by more than 2 or 3 settings, I'm going to show you the 2 or 3 settings you need to manipulate to be able to make the most out of your text. But the first thing is, most of my titles do not say 3D text in Final Cut Pro 10. Most of the time, I want to change the text. So before you do any image manipulation, change the text first. And to do that, click the Edit Text button. With the Edit Text button, this opens up the very familiar Boris text editing interface where we can change the text up here and we can format the text down below. When we're dealing with extruded text, there's not a whole lot of formatting that you can do inside this window. You want to do as little formatting as possible and do most of your formatting inside Final Cut as part of the 3D text extrusion process. To keep this simple, I'm going to just simply select all of my text and type extruded text. I'm going to type that, but it always surprises me what comes out. As with all things, the number one interface rule when working with text inside Boris is select something and do something to it. So if you wanted to change the size of the word extruded, highlight it, and you would go down to the size window and change the size, which is this pop-up menu down here. I could say make it 96 point. I could change this size and go to 132 point. We would select all of our text and say, I want this centered, and click the center button. It doesn't show as centered here, but it will when we click the apply button. We can change the font, and frankly, Arial is not quite as boring as Helvetica, but it is one of my most boring fonts. We could change this into something a bit more interesting. For instance, we could have it be Chalk Duster, which would look just terribly extruded, but it's just such a killer cool font, I had to show it to you. And let's see, what else could we do here? We could do, one of my favorite for extrusion would be Impact. IMPACT, that would be a good one. That one's sort of like one of those Ford commercials where the metal slams down and the rock breaks. I mean, look at that. That looks like it should be extruded. That's clearly lead-based type. Remember I said that we could adjust the text inside the text window, but in my particular case, I want to change some of the text formatting here. Notice I've got text tracking. Text tracking adjusts the spacing between the letters, so we could adjust the tracking and have them open up just a bit. You can either dial in the number that you want, or you can grab the slider and drag it. The leading is the distance between the lines, and I want to tighten that up just a little bit, because when you're working with headline fonts, especially big headline fonts, you want to have it be a little bit tighter and not looser. So I've tightened that up just a little bit. And to give ourselves room for the text to extrude, I'll open that just a little bit. So while you can adjust the text inside the text window itself, it's easier, I think, and more effective to do all of your adjustments inside the inspector in Final Cut. Notice that there's already a little bit of extrusion applied. If you look closely, you can see what that looks like. There we go. And I want to, the white dots are from the background. So that's probably going to confuse people because it's going to get in our face. So now that I think about it, I think this is a bad idea. Let's just do one more thing here. Get rid of that and go to here, add another background, set that to 720p, click here, add our extruded text. All these dots. All right, hang on. Let's just go with something really inflexible and just find a simple color. There we go. There's no sense confusing the interface when the extruded text interface doesn't have dots on it. 3D objects, by now you're very familiar with the whole process. Select it, click on the Edit Text. Select our clip, Edit Text, Extruded, which I'm now getting lots of practice in spelling. Text, Centered, Command A, Impact, Apply, and go down here, open up our text tracking, we'll set that to 12, open up our line, close our line leading, we'll set that to -6. See how that tightens that up just a little bit? And we can see that there's a little bit of extruded text and those white circles are gone, which just makes things a whole lot easier to see. Okay, here's where we've got some power. Notice these three choices called Rotate X, Rotate Y, and Rotate Z. What X allows us to do, -45, I'll just dial that in. Notice how it lays it back on it so that we're sort of looking up on it. If we change this to 45, see how we're looking down, or here we're looking up in the typical hero shot? Okay, so rotating X, and the reason I'm typing the number is because the way that the internet broadcast works, it makes our playback really choppy if I have a lot of intermediate stuff. So by just simply jumping from one point to another makes the demo easier to see. When you're working it inside Final Cut, click, hold, and drag on this control slider here, and you can adjust it in infinite amounts to the 10th of a degree to be exactly the angle that you want. So we'll set the X to -3. The Rotate Y is my favorite one. This is the one that gives the illusion of depth And we can set that to be a little bit more off to the side. Here we go, a little bit more off to the side to give us a little bit more of that in-depth look. And rotate Z allows us to rotate around the center axis in the way that we do with any of our video when we're rotating it inside Final Cut. The camera, there's actually a camera that spins around the text, which is the orbital camera spin. I tend to leave that at 0, but it gives you a different perspective of where the camera is. Just simply grab and drag it. So the ones that I like to set the angle are just these two. Rotate X and Y are the two that I tend to use the most, and rotate Y gives me that illusion of depth, the perception of 3D space that I can't get any other way. These are just if you want to do something simple, start there. Text tracking, line lighting, those are the same text controls that were useful. Extrusion depth, this is where the magic occurs. You ready? Watch this really closely. We're going to click right there, and boom, look at that. Is that amazing? Extruded out of solid lead is the extruded text inside Final Cut. Now, notice under bevel style, I've got a nice little beveled edge, a little rounded edge from the front surface to the back surface, and I can change that to be convex. And, okay, not bad, but the concave is really cool, because what that does is it makes it look like this is metal, which is, look at that, it's like molten lead in the back, like you'd see off an old newspaper press. Now, here it gets really cool. Now, this is it. You could stop here. You could take full credit for, by the way, position X, position Y. Grab this, drag it down. You can change the position of your text so that it doesn't feel like it's so high in the frame. Adjust that the same way that you would inside the inspector with the transform controls. We're adjusting the placement of the text on the screen. Now, you could stop here and say, this is my text. You could also keyframe animate any of these and allow us to move around. The keyframe animation would require rendering, of course, and I want to show you so many other things inside the package that I'm not going to do keyframe animation, except to say that the same way that you create keyframes here, look at this. If I grab this, I can have this slowly spin, so I can keyframe here, and then have the camera track through. And notice how the lighting is also shifting as we're moving from one angle to another. That's the orbital camera spinning around. And you can animate that. So you cut to this. I mean, this is Monday Night Football. Big, dramatic, pompous music playing, thumping bass, and this thing is cruising around and then explodes, dissolves, wipes, transitions into something else. All right, so let's go back here. I'm getting all excited. Now, you could, again, all the most important controls are bubbled up to the top. Now, I am very grateful to the folks at Boris for making this possible, because in past versions of Boris Continuum Complete, they put the most important controls about 700 pages down inside the control structure, and trying to find these required a roadmap. What they've done instead is they've now moved everything up that the important controls are at the top. And if you never explore farther down, you can still get really great looking effects. But if you do explore farther down, watch this. See this back bevels? If I take the orbital camera and rotate it all the way around, notice that the back of this is not particularly interesting. I can control the lighting on the back, the beveling on the back, what kind of anti-aliasing is done. And if you don't see it, you don't want to turn this on, because you're going to be rendering stuff that you're never going to see. Come on, back you go. But the back bevels allows you to make changes. Let's just see if we can reset this here. There we go. Set that to 0. And go farther down. Here's another cool thing. If we go to, watch this. This is so cool. Don't tell the people at Boris about this. If I grab position Z, means this is the depth position, all of our light is placed in space. If I grab this and pull it forward, notice how the text is now in front of the light. That is just way cool, because now I can take this and I mean, I can't begin to think of what the programming is to make that possible. But all you had to do is to slide this Z from the 0 position. Just go just a hair forward, bring it a little bit in front or a little bit behind. Look at that. I love the texture that's available there. That's just, that's amazing. All right, so let's just back this up just a bit. Leave it right. Let's do it here. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll farther down. And there's something else I was going to show you. This is really nice. I'm going to switch over to media here, go back down to my clip, and scroll down. I keep promising to scroll down, but I don't scroll down. See this front texture? So far, this looks like it's made out of extruded aluminum or possibly poured lead. I want to change what my texture is. So I'm going to click on this. You're familiar with a graphics well. This allows me to put something into that well. I'm going to scroll down until I find this golden sunset here and click Apply Clip. Look what just happened to my text. I've taken and mapped that video into the extruded text to give me a look that's totally different than that extruded aluminum that I had before. And again, if I go back to that Z space, this position Z, take it forward just a bit, take it back just a bit. I am such a fan of textures and such a fan of contrast between one part of an image and another. I hate flat lighting. I hate flat colors. And look at what we've been able to do by applying just a couple of simple settings. Look at how the rounded bevel makes that text jump out and just say, I'm here, pay attention to me. And we can drop in any piece of video. We could drop in a gradient. We could drop in a Photoshop image. It's just too cool, just too cool. And then as I go farther down, let me just show you a couple more things we can play with. We can change the strength of the texture. We can say dial it back so it's more of a combination of that metallic with the texture. We can change the color of lighting that's on the front. We can change the amount of specular, how bright it is, reflectivity. This is the sort of thing where you give yourself about an extra half hour and you just play with these things and see how they look on your particular project, because some of them are subtle and some of them are in your face. And if you never play with them, we've got something which looks great right here. And if you do play with them, you can tweak it until you're completely happy. I mean, look at this. Look at the settings that you could play with, but we don't have to if we're crashed for time. We can change the side texture. What do we see on the side of the image? If I've got this beautiful gold here, I'd come in with an image which is blue or a gradient which is blue to give me a sense of contrast and emphasize that depth. We can also play with, again, I've got the same control on reflectivity and speculars. I can also change colors of the bevel. But I'm going farther down. Like I said, you've got more controls here than you can shake a stick at. The back texture, there's no reason to put anything in the back texture if you don't see the back. Okay, but I'm trying to get down here. There we go. Now, we have ambient light intensity, which takes out that whole texture, just sort of lights the whole thing. Or I have these other lights I can pull up. I can bring in light 1, which comes in from the front. I can bring in light 2, where'd it go? Right there, which comes in from the back. I can bring in light 3. Let's pull light 2 down. I can bring in light 3, which is directly from the back. This is a side light, and in light 3 is a backlight. So I've got a front light, a side light, a backlight. I can add jitter. Holy smoke. We can add motion blur. Motion blur takes forever and 3 days to render regardless of what application you're working with. But if you have something which needs to be blurred with the movement, it's off by default to give ourselves faster output. But by turning motion blur on, when you create the effect and render it, it'll render with blur whenever movement occurs. We can also add a 3D ripple, which gives us the look of a flag. And again, just to save ourselves some rendering time, I'm going to, well, here, just look at this. Okay, see how it's rippling as I drag through the clip? It looks like our solid metal text is being seriously deformed with a high-speed hurricane wind, and you can turn that back off by unchecking the ripple. We can also add drop shadows, which is very much like gilding the lily when you've got this kind of an extrusion going on. And then again, let's go all the way back up to here, and we can adjust exactly the kind of contrast we have, not position Z, with position Z, and bring it back into the full lit condition, or take it out to the edges and really make it look spectacular. This is just endless fun to play with, and it gives us a capability which we can't begin to touch inside Final Cut 10 with the existing shipping effects that are shipped inside the application. Well, let's take a look at something a little bit different, just a little bit, just to touch on this. Because if you remember this very first shot where it's my logo is actually an EPS file. If I take a look at another option that we have within extruded text, I can extrude an EPS file. Let's just grab this across and drag it. And again, go to Extruded EPS. Now, the way this works is this will work with any EPS file. However, if you want to have the colors of the EPS file come in, it has to be saved as an Illustrator 8 file. Now, saving a file in Illustrator 8, to say that that's an older format is an understatement, and you need to be sure to look at that Illustrator 8 file, because when I converted it, I had some conversion problems. If you don't need to have the colors from the EPS file come in, you can use the current version, which is what I'm going to do here. The way you bring this in is you click on External File. Final Cut does not support EPS files. Final Cut does not support Adobe Illustrator files, but Boris Continuum Complete does. So as long as you click on this external file, there's my EPS file, there's my logo, I click Open, there's my EPS file. Again, you cannot bring this in with an import to Final Cut. You've got to bring it in through the external file interface. The controls are exactly the same. Again, I'm going to make the background disappear. I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger by scaling. Let's see, where'd we go? Master scale. We'll pull that up. There it is. And we'll rotate the Y just a little bit. Nope. And we will, let's see, where'd we go? We'll go to Bevels. We'll leave that just straight as is. And then, again, use file color. I'm going to turn that off. File color will only work when it's in Illustrator 8 format. We can adjust the surface color. Let's click here. And we can change the surface color into something a bit more interesting. We can change the highlight color into something more highlightable. And then the rest of the forms are what we've been looking at. We can change the angles, we can change the depth, we can change the extrusion amount. We have very, very similar controls. We can change our front texture. All the stuff that we looked at before, we can do the same, except now I'm working with an EPS image. So think of this as a way that you can pitch this to the client, where you'd say, I can give you a nice 3D look and animate it. So you can pitch an animated open to the client and charge them $855 million and take about a minute and a half to put it together inside Continuum Complete, and the client is thrilled and your bank account is thrilled. Everybody wins. This is a good thing. And we can just change, again, the x-axis and the y-axis until you're totally happy with the way it looks. There we go. Not happy with that. Let's try -30. I'm happier with that. And again, tweaking can occur until you're, whoa. There we go. Stop now. Good. I rest my case. Whether you're working with EPS images or creating the text inside Boris itself. By the way, just one note. The way that this works is the EPS image is parsed as an EPS image, but it all comes in as one layer. Notice that it's having a hard time deciding if Larry Jordan or the star is in the foreground. Well, that's the way that this works inside this plugin. If you want to be able to take each individual layer and separate the layer and provide different amounts of extrusion for each layer, you're going to need to move that to Boris Red. Boris Red gives us complete control over each of the layers inside an EPS file, whereas here it's a single layer. Most of the time, a single layer, especially for a simple 3D extrusion, is perfectly okay. But if you really want to do a whole lot more with an EPS image, a standalone application like Red gives you a whole lot more capability. Also, when we're extruding, whether we're creating text inside the plugin itself or you're creating an EPS image, the extrusion amount is always the same for all elements. I can't select Larry and make it one depth and Jordan a second depth and Associates and make it a third depth. I don't have that kind of control, not when it's text nor when it's an EPS. Again, this is a single layer which has a single amount of extrusion applied to it. There's more I can show you. There's lots more controls, but it's one of the things where you want to download the free trial, play with the free trial, and just tweak and giggle and tweak, which is how I've spent my last week playing with this. So we're going to shift gears now. What I want to do now is I want to talk about a second part of the package. Notice that here I've got 3D objects. Then we've got art looks and blur and sharpening controls and color correction and tonality, film style, image restoration, keys and blends, lighting effects, match move, which is a built-in motion tracker, a particle system, a perspective system, all kinds of stylized effects, time effects and warp effects. There's, like I said, there's 230 different effects, transitions, plugins, and backgrounds to work with. I mean, it's just amazing. And I don't have time in an hour to even list all of them, much less to show you how they work. But one that I like a lot is image restoration. Let me just show you what the filters are and explain what they do, and then I'll illustrate about 8 of them. Dust and scratches minimizes if you've got a film transfer and you want to minimize the dust and scratches as opposed to add dust and scratches. You would want to use that. DV, what DV does is it compensates for some of the issues of lower quality DV footage into bringing up into a digital site. Oh, English, so hard. DV Fixer fixes DV tapes. Flicker. What Flicker is designed to do is to decrease like lighting flicker. And now there's kinds of flicker between frames, and there's also flicker within the frame. And this allows you to take a look at both. Let's see what else. Lens correction. This allows us to compensate for a GoPro lens. Look at how it's totally warped my logo. You could apply this to an existing clip and deform it, or apply it to a GoPro clip and reform it. I'll show you how that works in a second. Magic sharpening is just way cool. I'll illustrate that. Motion key should be illegal. It is it's the big finish. It's amazing. Let's see. Noise reducer. What this does theoretically is it reduces the amount of noise caused by low light situation where you're not putting enough light in and the sensor is generating noise rather than generating pictures. It's not a bad plugin, this particular one, but there are so many other noise plugins out there that I would probably recommend something different. But there are so many other good things inside BCC. One should never judge the package based upon a single effect. So I'm going to skip over that one because it's not that great. But some of this other stuff is amazing. You want skin smoothing? Smooth Tone will do that. You want to upres standard def to a high def picture, or upres high def to 4K, or take, God forbid, a standard def picture and blow it up to 4K. Upres can take care of that. And the wire removal is another stunning effect. There's just so many cool things in here to play with. Let's get ourselves started with GoPro footage. This is some GoPro footage that's shot outside Boston South Station, showing the new construction and the new bridges that were there. They were not there when I lived in Boston, but the train tracks were. And I have this great affinity for train tracks. Now, most of us know that when we look at train tracks, they are not deeply curved like that, especially when the train is going straight. And this is caused by the severe distortion of the fisheye lens that a GoPro camera has. The reason that it has infinite focus is it's just the way fisheye lenses work. The problem is this could cause motion sickness on the part of people that are looking at it, and it'd be nice to get this straightened out. You yourself could deform the shot and have it, but you don't have time. You want to get this thing done. So I'm going to just park here. I put this marker in just so I could find this. Look at the curvature of what should be a straight bridge, and look at the U-bend this track is going through. Select the clip. Go to BCC Image Restoration. Scroll down until you find, I got to find it. Where'd it go? Lens correction. Drag lens correction on. Watch what happens. Is that amazing or what? Instantaneous straighten out ability using the default settings. Really nice. Now we could go in and tweak all the different settings, and you know that may be useful to you. But let me show you this one thing that's really nice. I'm going to take this clip and go up to media and grab. Let's just do this. Let's Command C to copy and Command paste as connected clip. Select this, go up to here, select crop, pull this in and select the top clip and done. Turn off the filter. Okay, the image on the left shows the uncorrected image. The image on the right shows the corrected image. You can just see how much of an improvement there is in the before on the left and the after on the right. Now, you're right. I'm missing a portion of the image down here, and I'm missing a portion of the image up here that's caused by straightening out the fisheye lens, but I would much prefer to lose a few pixels off the top and the bottom to be able to have a good-looking picture for the rest of the image. So that is BCC lens correction. Single click. Yes, you got things to adjust, but the default setting is just about perfect for any GoPro camera. Here's another one. This is from a show that I co-host with Norman Holland called Two Real Guys. This is shot with a Sony EX3 camera. We're shooting XDCam EX footage, and this was shot 720p. And that's a pretty good-looking shot. It's well exposed. It's well lit. Talent is, plus or minus, but the rest of it ain't too bad. What I was discovering as I was taking the show into final color grading is that there was a significant difference in focus between the center camera and the two side cameras. The two side cameras were soft, and the center camera was sharp. Well, the problem is you can't focus the camera after the image has been recorded, but you can sharpen it. Now, the way that our eye perceives focus is we see it as edge detail. If you can see a clear difference in edges from one to the other, that tells your eye that the image is in focus. If you can't see a clear difference in edges, it tells your eye that the image is not in focus. So focus is actually the perception of edge detail. What sharpening does is it looks for those edges and enhances the perception of edge detail so that it makes it look like the picture is more in focus than it actually was. To this regard, we've got a really cool sharpening tool inside BCC, and we're going to scroll down to Magic Sharp. Click, hold, and drag on top of the clip. Now, here's a neat feature that I like a lot. See where it says compare to original off? This allows me to see the finished effect, but doesn't allow me to do an A-B comparison between where we were and where we are. I can set this as a wipe, and it will wipe between the two images, which is helpful in some situations, but the one that I really like is the side-by-side. This creates a side-by-side comparison of the original image on the left and the sharpened image on the right, and I can grab this compare wipe and just drag this over until we are properly centering me in the frame. Now, the first time you saw that picture, when I showed it to you, you looked at that and you said, that's not a bad picture. But look at how much better it looks when I set the magic sharpening, and look at, all of a sudden it has a much clearer perception of being sharp and in focus. That's the default setting. Now we can make it more. You can see the sharpening especially. Let's just zoom into 100% here and take a look at my beard. That's a really good place to check because beard is all edges. Look at how soft it is there, and look at how sharp it is here. You can sharpen this more. I'm going to take this way up and make it extremely offensive. That's what it's doing. It's looking for the edges and adding that edge detail that makes it look like it's sharper. Now, it's also way over sharpened the background. It's way over sharpened my beard. It's maybe a posterization effect to put on a poster to get somebody's eye to take a look is fine, but as talent, I would sue the artist. So we want to pull that back. And again, notice just a little bit of sharpening makes all the difference. We'll just zoom this back again, Shift-Z. The original wasn't bad, but sharpening, in some situations, clearly sometimes you want to have a soft look. A romantic scene, for instance, I would probably have a softer look. But sometimes your focus, especially when you're shooting DSLR cameras, focus can be off. You want to tighten that focus up just a little bit. Magic Sharpening does a great job. Let's take a look at something different. Go down here. Oh, smooth tone. This is an older gentleman. I say that just in case you didn't guess that for yourself. An older gentleman, and This man has got a face that's got about 10 miles of bad roads in it, and he's lived a life that's made those bad roads necessary. I've added a little bit of color correction on this. This is a stock footage scene that was leaning a little bit green, but I wanted to have his face look good. If we take a look at the scopes, we can see on the vector scope that he's sitting right on the skin tone line. So in terms of where the skin tone is set, he's okay. The reason I mention this is that Boris does not use facial recognition. It uses skin tone recognition. It looks for skin that's in the ballpark of where skin color needs to be. And it will smooth the red of his face, but not smooth the green of the background. So how does it work? Well, we select the clip. That's, as always, select something, do something to it. And we're going to go down to the smooth tone. Click, hold, and drag it on top of the clip. And it defaults. And again, we'll do the side-by-side comparison so you can see the two. The original is on the left. The smoothed is on the right. Now, let us not assume things for smooth toning, skin smoothing, that, I mean, we're not going to make him look 20. We could try to make him look 20, but he would come out looking like Barbie doll and Ken. It would look just artificial. Our goal here is just to make it smoother, make it a little bit gentler, take the edge off. So again, we've got the original on the left, the smoothing on the right, and what we can do here is just pull this up a bit, soften him a bit more, add a few more iterations, and what we're doing is we're looking for the trade-off of keeping detail on stuff that isn't skin, background and eyebrows and shirt detail. But notice how we've just gentled him out a bit. And this is not a still image, it's a moving image. And he's moving back and forth. And it tracks the skin as he moves. So I'm not setting a mask in here where I've got to keyframe the mask if he's moving. It just softens him a little bit, knocks the edges off. For something, crime drama, probably don't want to do it. A romantic scene, probably do want to do it. It depends upon what your story is, and adding it is as easy as adding any other effect, and we can compare the side by side to see if we like it, or toggle the blue checkbox on and off. When the blue checkbox is off, the effect is not in effect. When the blue checkbox is on, the effect is in effect, and to delete any effect, simply highlight the name, press the delete key, and we've deleted the effect. Here, this is the rendered version. And let's just hide this. Here we go. Take a look at it again. There's a guy that does not want to be on camera, but his grandson asked, and so he is going to say yes, even though of all the places he wants to be, that's not it. This is another cool one. Imagine, if you will, that this is an old-time steam train. It isn't. It's actually a London surface transit right outside the Excel Center in London. But let us pretend it's an old-time steam train. And let us pretend also that this old-time steam train is in the days before electricity. We're doing a period Western, for instance, and these power poles are just completely driving us nuts. Now, what I would really want to do is to make that whole background disappear. But for the purposes of this exercise, let's pretend that I just want to make these wires disappear. I didn't have any licensed footage of Matt Damon hanging from a cable that I could make disappear. For some reason, they don't publish that kinds of stuff that I can play with. So we're going to work with electric wires instead and make the wires disappear. There's a tool called wire removal. It's right here. Click, hold, and drag. Now, this time we are going to work with the white circles. The white circles allow us to define where the wire is and what I want to replace the wire with. Select the clip, go up to the view, and set it to preview area. Now, notice that I've got this red line. What we're essentially doing is a Photoshop clone effect. I am cloning one part of the image and putting it elsewhere. I'm going to get rid of these two bottom wires here so that you can see it. Clearly, I would do multiple clones and get rid of the upper wires. There's a whole lot of cleanup that's got to be done here. So we'll just pretend that this is just this one wire we have to work with. Put this starting line where the wires start. Put this ending line where the wires end. And then adjust the width so it's wide enough to cover the wires. Then we grab the clone center tool, which is this one right here, and drag that on that part of the image that is clean that you want to clone. So I want to take this sky and replace where that wire is. So I first set it to preview area, and then I adjusted where my line goes, and I changed the view to render. And look at that. The wires are gone. Is that not cool? So what I did is, let's just do it again because this is just way too cool to ignore. I select the clip, drag wire removal on, switch this from render to preview area. That shows my red lines. This is the part that I can remove the area from. Drag this up to put it on the end and the start of where the wires are. Increase the width so it covers that which you want to remove. Grab the clone, drag it up to here to say this is the area we want to clone from, and switch to render area, and the wires are gone. Now, not quite gone. There's a little bit of a dip there. I'll just drag that down a bit, and now the wires are gone. Really, really cool. Again, you've got an actor dangling from a wire acting like he's falling through space. Okay, I would change the wire and have it go from the top of the frame to the actor's back, and then clone that out. This is for those of you that A, want to keep your actors alive after the shooting is done, and there are directors that I wonder about. Anyway, if you want to keep your actors alive after the shooting is done, you're going to attach them to a wire. You need to get the wire to be removed. One more really, really cool effect. This one, I first came across this just a couple, we got to do this one, Uprest. What we can do with Uprest, there's just so much here. I don't have the time. This is a shot from a film, His Girl Friday. These are the reporters in the writer's room just before the jailbreak breaks out, and they're all talking about what got them into journalism in the first place, and these are clearly the same look as the journalism students I teach every day. So the reporters are in standard def. This has been taken from a DVD. It's interlaced footage, and I need to blow it up. Select, remember, I've got to add a background. I then grab the Upres filter and drag the Upres filter onto the background. I click the image well and go to my media package and select the footage that I want to insert into it. Go back to my, and we've seen this before with the EPS and extruded text and other stuff, okay? It automatically says this is DV footage. It defaults to the correct aspect ratio, 4:3, 16:9. It says, do I want to fit this in the frame or do I want to letterbox it? Fit in the frame is almost always the best choice. Fill the frame. It's going to fill the frame, but notice how I've cropped the top and the bottom. Distort to fill. If I ever catch you using distort to fill, I am going to slap you up the side of the head. This is the definition of ugly. Make the stuff look like the director shot it. Just fit it in the frame. Keep the aspect ratio. Don't lose any pixels. All is good. We can then adjust the sharpening. We can then adjust the scaling. But here's the part that you have to do. It defaults to like fast or sharp, which is, okay, its mother likes it. But what you want to do is set this to magic sharp. It automatically adds that sharpening that we saw before on my face. It adds the sharpening here, and then you want to set the sharpness. This is not the default setting. The default setting is at 0, which is not good. You want to set the sharpness to between 25 and 40. And what this does is it adds back in that edge detail that standard def took away. So when you blow it up to HD, it looks like it's actually in focus. Now, it's not going to look like you shot it in HD. There's just not enough pixels there, but it's going to look a whole lot better. However, there's a big gotcha you need to pay attention to. In Final Cut 10, Final Cut 10 does not allow automatic deinterlacing of this footage. So if you're working with interlaced footage that's standard def, what you want to do instead is use the BCC Uprest filter inside Motion. You have all the same settings plus the ability to deinterlace inside Motion in a way that you don't have inside Final Cut 10. Because this BCC works in both Motion and Final Cut, doesn't make any difference. Take your clip, move it over to Motion, deinterlace, bring the deinterlaced clip back, the high-res Uprest clip, bring it back into Final Cut. and you're good to go. Whether it gets upresed in Motion or upresed inside Final Cut, you're going to end up with the same results. Now, last one. Oh my gracious, Jesse, I need another hour. So this one is so cool. Be sure you're sitting down and watch this. There is our train. Our train is a steam train, circa 1842. It's just left the Western Village, and it's cruising out of the station when, instead of a stagecoach, I've got a 1992 Ford Fiesta running through my shot. Well, what the heck is a Fiesta doing in the middle of an 1842 Western? First, I shoot the production assistant that's responsible for letting that car on the set, and now I've ruined my entire closing credit scene. As far as I know, my life is over, and this is just, look at that. It's like, let me show you, I'm a star. You can see me. There I am. All right, so here's how this works. This is illegal. So you go to the image restoration, you scroll up until you see motion key, drop motion key on top of the clip. It warns you, hey, this is not yet complete. So here's the big gotcha. If you set an in and an out on a clip, these wells don't respect it. If you set a favorite region on a clip, the wells don't respect it. You're going to need to take the clip that you want to remove the car from, and you're going to need to export it as a standalone file. Bring that exported file back in, and then Final Cut will recognize it. This is not a BCC issue. This is the way that Final Cut deals with ins and outs. It ignores them whenever you're going into a gravity well. Final Cut 7 did exactly the same thing. So if you need to work with a portion of a clip, you need to export that clip and then bring that exported clip back in. And the way that digital video works, there's no appreciable quality loss when you're doing that export. And if you're really worried about it, export it as a ProRes 4x4 clip, and there won't be any quality loss. So the first thing I want to do is I want to say, where is my source clip? Go to my media folder. By the way, inside Final Cut, I always have two events, one where my media is stored and one where my projects are stored. You can work with a minimum of one. You can have an unlimited number, but I always have at least two so I can quickly find my projects and quickly find my media. So let's go back down to here, click on the source layer, find our train and car clip, apply the clip. You got to click that button. If you don't, things break. Now, notice that there's this control right here. This is the control that determines where is the car. I'm going to grab the control, the center one, and drag it right as the car starts to come into the frame. I'm going to change its selection area from an oval to a rectangle, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger because it's got to include the entire car, right about in there. Then I'm going to find the spot just before the car comes in, right about there, and set a keyframe for area position. Then as the car comes in, I'll go to right about there. I'm going to drag this over and make sure that it's big enough to include the car and set another keyframe for that position. And I'm going to just drag over to here and set a keyframe for that position. And then the car starts to drive off, but it stays inside the rectangle. So what I've just done is I've keyframed the movement of that rectangle. All right, about there. I got to move it over. Keyframe the movement of that rectangle so it always contains the entire car. Has to contain the entire car. So let me just double check. Yep, the car is fully contained as it's moving across the frame. So that tells me the object that I want to remove is inside that rectangle. In order for this effect to work, there has to be a frame where that object does not exist. I can't make the train disappear because BCC doesn't know what is behind it. It has to have a frame where it knows what's behind the moving object to be able to replace it. So I can't get rid of the train, but I can get rid of the car because I've got some frames where the car doesn't exist. The other thing that I want to do is I want to go down to, I got to find it. There's a rectangle side here. Oh, replacement range. I need to set this to 400 so that it replaces enough to get rid of the car. This is this determines the size. This tracks the car. This determines the size of what replaces the car. It's called the replacement range. Then you change this from setup region to remove area. That's it. Watch what happens. I'm just dragging across. The car is in the frame, but you can't see it. Look at that. There's no car. No car. Is that incredible? Holy smoke. I just, this is, I don't understand how this works. I really don't. I have tried for years. I do not understand how it works, but it works great.